Y'all, this idea that the Trump Elon Musk thing is staged, like, I get it because it's such a hot mess, dumpster fire out in public, right? But it's such textbook cult leader having a fallout with a lieutenant who's leaving the cult that, like, I'm sorry. It's not staged. It was predictable. That's why I predicted it. But, like, this is textbook. This is textbook Jen Jones. This is textbook David Berg of the Children of God. This is textbook what I said from the day of the election. There was no chance that they were going to survive more than 6 months to a year. None. And I don't think there's anything Elon can do to help his damaged image. Nobody made him go out and become a full supervillain, and nobody, at least on the left, I think, is going to forgive him for what he did. He's just done.
I know everybody on the internet is desperate to have a hot, edgy take, but y'all, what's happening between Trump and Elon is not staged. It's not an elaborate fabrication. This is two fragile narcissists crashing out. Don't tell me that the left is not as prone to conspiracy theory thinking as the right, because the posts I've seen in the last 12 hours, and I've been saying this for a while now, I think that we in our society have abandoned the concept of Occam's razor in favor of fantastical conspiratorial thinking. And we know that when the economy is bad, when people are struggling really hard, when people feel that they don't have access to a good quality of life, that they aren't in control of their own lives, that conspiracy theory thinking tends to become more prevalent in the culture. Sure, Elon Musk is trying to distance himself from all of the horrible things he's done in government because it's destroying his brand. He's still done and continues to do incredible damage. But just like you don't give these folks more power than they actually have, don't give them more credit than they deserve, as entertaining as it may be.
The thing that pisses me off about that argument and why I think it's...
Please go watch that creator's entire video and then go follow her. She's an election expert and y'all need to listen to what she has to say. Absolute conspiracy theory bullshit I have seen coming from the left on this app over the last week has been wild. People making completely unfounded claims around the lawsuit in Rockland, New York, trying to get a full New York State hand recount of the 2024 election, and around people claiming that Trump is withholding FEMA funds from North Carolina because people in North Carolina secretly have information that he stole the election there. And then also these very viral videos claiming that the ugly, messy breakup between Elon Musk and Donald Trump is somehow staged. And wild claims about why that might be. I get why conspiracy theory thinking is comforting. I understand that at times of great political and economic instability, people are more prone to falling into it. Y'all, we've got to be better than this.
I'm seeing an uptick in left-leaning conspiracy theories and misinformation on the results of the 2024 election pop up that I think need to be nipped in the butt immediately. So let's talk about that. Two pieces of left-leaning misinformation conspiracy theories that I really just want to, nip in the bud immediately. The first one being the lawsuit that's happening in Rockland County, New York, and how that is proof that Trump stole the election. So let's talk about that one first. The second one is that Trump is withholding natural disaster funds to North Carolina because he stole the election and everybody knows about it. That's the second one. I've seen a couple of those today as well. So let's talk about the New York case, number one. So there's been no decision that has been made in that lawsuit. It was filed, and a panel of the Supreme Court in New York basically said, all right, we're going to let you guys go through and start gathering and then presenting your evidence. Nothing has been produced yet. The basis of the claims for this organization that is behind the lawsuit is that they need to hand count all the ballots in New York State as it's related to the presidential and Senate races. Because number one, they claim that an independent Senate candidate, a bunch of people publicly said that they were going to vote for him, and now they're saying that their votes actually did not go to him. Okay. The second argument in their lawsuit is that because a lot of people voted Democrat for U.S. Senator for Kristen Gillibrand, but did not vote for Kamala Harris, that means that obviously Trump interfered. The thing that pisses me off about that argument and why I think it's so important to talk about it right now, and why the left needs to not adopt this kind of like argument and framework, is that it denies the fact that we live in a country that is deeply racist and misogynistic, and that it actually makes perfect sense that people would vote for Kristen Gillibrand and not vote for Kamala Harris because they are racist. It's infuriating to me as a Black person, as a Black researcher, as a Black woman who has dedicated the last 11, almost 12 years of my life to working in democracy spaces, working in politics, that even in this moment, there is such a refusal to confront the fact that millions of people wanted this to happen because they were so uncomfortable with having a Black woman in a position of power over them. That like, it's easier to believe that Donald Trump literally stole the election by hacking into our ballot machines than the fact that like your grandma is deeply racist. That's infuriating to me. And like, we have to stop that immediately. So there's that. Second misinformation piece, that Donald Trump is withholding funds to North Carolina because I guess he stole the election there, and like people know it. And that's why, because there's all these, like, there's groundswell of people in North Carolina who are saying that Donald Trump like hacked into the voting and ballot machines. Donald Trump is a deeply petty person. He is a deeply childish and petty and small-minded person. Those are the nicest things I could say about him. He's not giving aid to North Carolina because he likes hurting people. This is who millions of people in this country wanted president of the United States over a highly qualified Black woman. Again, that is the root of the issue, that it is easier for people to believe all of these conspiracy theories, all of this misinformation, than face the hard, cold facts, which is that the president of the United States is deeply underqualified. We all were presented with that information. We were presented with a very highly qualified Black woman. People saw those two and decided to go for the deeply unqualified white man based solely on the fact that he is a white man. It's going to be incredibly important that people have faith in the safety and security of our elections if there is any hope of us actually moving forward as a country. These narratives, these conspiracy theories that I'm seeing pop up on TikTok, this is how we make sure that people feel completely disengaged and do not want to involve themselves in the 2026 election. They keep the House, they keep the Senate, and we're done. We have to confront the racism in this country. It is the only way we get ahead, and it's the crux of every single issue when it comes to politics, when it comes to voting, when it comes to elections. We got to stop playing around with this, for real. Our election infrastructure and the way that elections are administered at every single level in this country is safe. There are entire industries that are built on making sure that our elections are safe and secure. This is like, we are at the point that I'm seeing people on the left that are so in delusion about the crux of how we got here that they are now starting to adopt right-wing talking.
It's rigged statements, and people watching post-election speeches from Kamala and AOC who were sure that they were alluding to some type of event that was going to happen was so embarrassing. It was MAGA QAnon. Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, I kind of blame Taylor Swift a little bit. People always hunting for Easter eggs, for hidden messages. The other day, my 22-year-old made a comment about how everybody, especially Gen Z, but just like really everybody in American society, needs to re-embrace the concept of Occam's razor. That we kind of love the titillation and we love the fantasy of conspiracies. Americans love their conspiracy theories, whether it's on the left or the right. I mean, we can talk about how that's a form of escapism and it absolves us of having to take any responsibility, take any action to fix our situation. I also don't want to scold these folks too much because I think they were really overwhelmed. They were in shock. They were trying to cope in the moment. It was just in a maladaptive way. I hope they're all working to get out the vote now. I respectfully disagree. The American people deserve to know the truth. I think the truth will save the integrity of our elections. As of right now, I do not trust the next election will be protected if they actually investigated, blah, 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 blah. I have no problem with the lawsuit in New York going forward. I'm actually glad that the judge has determined that they should move on to discovery. If people have evidence and they want to bring a lawsuit, I think they should. But I stand by my claim that you have no business saying that elections don't have integrity. You have no business saying that it was all rigged. There was fraud. We shouldn't bother voting because it's all been gamed out in advance and the election is being stolen for. Like, don't say that shit. You don't have proof of that at all. And when you say that shit in public, all you are doing is demoralizing people and suppressing the vote. You are discouraging people from engaging in their civic duty to vote in elections. In every special election, we all need to become super voters who turn out in every single election. And actually, like if you truly believe this, if you really believe that the elections do not have integrity, if you really believe it was all rigged and the election was stolen from Kamala Harris, because I think that is far more comforting for many of us to accept. For those of us that voted for her, it's really hard for us to wrap our brains around the fact that more Americans in this country voted for a fascist bigot than would vote for a black woman. It's really hard for us to accept that this country could elect somebody like Donald Trump, especially if the people in our sphere are not like that. It's almost incomprehensible for us. And because our brains struggle with that cognitive dissonance, it's much easier to fall into conspiracy theories. It's much easier to reach for something fantastical, to abandon Occam's razor, to say there was some elaborate satellite-based scheme to steal the election, to steal it in districts with 500 voters in a state that went for Kamala Harris, than it is to say this country has a massive problem with racism and misogyny. This country has abandoned the working class, and conservative working class Americans are furious, and Donald Trump exploited their anger and their suffering and appealed to their racism. That doesn't feel good to look at that reality. So I understand conspiracy theories are more comforting. If it turns out that there was some massive scheme to steal the election, I will be the first person to own it. I will be the first person to stand up and eat crow and say, I'm so sorry. I'll take my big slice of humble pie. I will be the first one, I promise you. And honestly, if you are concerned about election integrity, you think that there's something hinky happening, that should make you even more motivated to show up and vote. Let's look at Serbia. One of the things that was crucial in toppling Slobodan Milosevic's autocratic rule was the election. The young, mostly student-driven movement knew they had information that Milosevic was going to rig the election in a country much smaller than ours in a way that is not possible here. They knew that he was going to be determined to be the winner no matter how people voted. So do you know what they did? They didn't say, it's all rigged, y'all, give up. He's going to make sure he wins. No, they did the opposite. They pushed for a massive get out the vote movement. They made sure everybody showed up and voted. Do you know why? Because then when Milosevic claimed he won, they could say, no. Look at all of the millions of people who didn't want you, who voted against you. There is no way. There's no way you won. They had the data to back up their claims. They had the ability to confront Milosevic and say, your claim that you won the election is not legitimate because here's the actual voter turnout. They had massive, indisputable turnout against him. So if you're concerned about election integrity, you need to be 10 times exponentially more determined to get out to vote. And not just you, but you need to be working for a get out the vote movement. Volunteering as a poll watcher, working as an election worker, and making sure that your granny, your neighbors, your friends that you hang out with every week and y'all don't really want to talk about politics too much, too fucking bad. Y'all talk about how you're all going to vote. You make sure that you drive folks to the polls. You make sure that everybody you know is registered to vote, and you make sure that they are committed to voting. We all become super voters now. We vote in every, special election, every local election. We vote in every single election. We normalize voting as our civic duty. It is something that everybody does. It's like brushing your teeth. We all vote in every election so that we have massive voter turnout. And we normalize it not only within our own families or for ourselves personally, but we normalize it in our communities as well, with your coworkers, with folks at church, with folks in your gardening club, with the gals you do yoga with. Everybody votes. We all talk about how excited we are to vote. We talk about the things on the ballot. We push for a get out the vote movement, so that when we vote, there is no way that it can be disputed. There is no tiny margin, right? Like Kamala Harris shouldn't lose by that much. We need to have blowout elections for Democrats. And actually, we're already seeing that. We're already seeing huge wins for Democrats in special elections between November and now. It's our civic duty to vote. We all need to be voting. The harder this regime tries to make it for us to vote, the more determined we have to be to show up. That's how we defend election integrity. Sure, let the lawsuits proceed. No problem with that. Totally fine with that. That's not what's going to save us. It's the American people acting through massive resistance in the streets, through economic pressure, and through voting.
Here, I have gotten hundreds of comments on my YouTube channel asking me to discuss the accuracy of what happened in November. I understand there are multiple groups with data analysts and statisticians who are looking into the tallies from various districts. And basically since November 6th, we have seen Democrats echoing very much what we heard from Republicans in 2020, which is that everything was fixed. And I've been deeply frustrated with Democrats in my comments saying that the election was rigged and so there is no point in voting in the midterms in 2026 because all of our elections are completely fixed now and it's just pointless to vote because we're going to lose no matter what. And so I've constantly been pushing back against that, saying, there's special elections happening every week all across the country and Democrats are consistently winning. They're consistently winning in districts that have gone Republican. They're consistently ousting long-term Republicans. They are flipping seats that have had Republicans in those positions since sometimes, the 80s, sometimes for like 100 years. So it's simply not factual to say that elections are rigged and there's no point in voting because Democrats can't win. That is active misinformation. And when you choose to spread that, whether because you are really bummed out about the election or because you're a doomer, whatever your motivation is, when you spread that misinformation, all you are doing is actively discouraging people from exercising their right to vote. You tell Democrats, when you tell independents, when you tell anybody who cares about democracy that voting is rigged, all you are doing is you are ceding elections in advance to the fascists. We need to be getting out. We need to be voting. We are seeing in election after election after election since November that Democrats are winning, that democracy is working. Elon Musk spent $20 million trying to buy a state Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, and it didn't fucking work. Stop telling people that elections are rigged and that voting is pointless because that's not true. It's simply not true. There was a news story this week from New York State that I know is going to encourage this line of thinking, and people are going to they already are popping off all over social media being like, see, it's all rigged. It's all rigged. So I want to share some facts about this lawsuit in New York State that is challenging the election results there, or at least calling them into question, because it's so easy for folks to read more into it than is actually there. Do we need oversight? Do we need investigations? Do we need to have accountability? Yes. Do we need to jump to conclusions? Do we need to spread misinformation? Absolutely not. So here's the press release from May 29th. I found it published on a New York State News Channel 6 ABC website. A lawsuit was filed in Rockland County, New York, questioning the accuracy of the presidential and Senate elections in 2024. And the New York Supreme Court judge overseeing the case has now said discovery may proceed. The lawsuit was brought by a group called Smart Legislation, and it wants a full hand recount in both the presidential and U.S. Senate races in Rockland County. Smart Legislation is the action arm of Smart Elections, who is the lead plaintiff in the case. My understanding is that this is their press release that I'm reading from that ABC chose to publish. Basically, the plaintiffs' data analysts here are claiming there are statistical indications that the presidential results would be highly unlikely, and they claim that the Senate results are outright incorrect. And they say in order for the constitutional rights of each person in Rockland County, New York to be upheld, and what the lawsuit itself is actually seeking is a hand recount of all of the paper ballots in full public for both the presidential and Senate ballots for that county. Their claim is that there cannot be confidence in the outcome of the elections for both Senate and president without that hand recount. My understanding here is that this group hopes to have these kinds of lawsuits in multiple counties in multiple states. So their claim is that there are results that are statistically unlikely in these districts, and that calls into question the validity of the votes. This has prompted people all over TikTok, but I see it on Blue Sky as well, to claim that the election was completely rigged based off of just this overview of this lawsuit without looking at the data. They haven't even done discovery yet. And these are small precincts in New York State, a state that went for Kamala Harris. I'm just going to say right now, I think it's irresponsible to be getting on social media and telling hundreds of thousands of people that the election was potentially rigged based off of this press release. Now, to be fair, the lawsuit is not just based on looking at the statistical probabilities. So specifically, we're looking only at the U.S. Senate races here. They have sworn affidavits from voters. In District 39, they have 9 sworn statements saying that they cast a ballot for Diane Sayre. However, the County Elections Board shows that only 5 votes were recorded for that candidate. Same thing in District 62, they have sworn statements from 5 voters who said they all voted for Sayre. However, the Elections Board only recorded 3 votes. They're basing a lot of this lawsuit on the differential, the drop-off between the presidential vote and the Senate vote. The claim here is that Trump overperformed compared to Republicans down ballot, and Harris underperformed compared to Democrats down ballot, specifically Senate races. The claim here is that drop-offs between presidential and Senate candidates tend to run about 1% to 2%. So to see Kamala Harris have a 9% drop-off and Trump have a 23% gain, that seems odd to the people who filed this lawsuit. So this is where everybody is freaking the fuck out and screaming about, FRAUD. They're looking at this district Ramapo. This is the U.S. Senate race in that district. You can see that Kirsten Gillibrand got almost 80% of the vote, 79.38% of the vote. Seems like a heavily Democratic district, right? You compare it to the presidential vote in the same district. Again, a district where the Democratic Senate candidate got 79.38% of the vote. Kamala Harris got 0% of the vote. 0 votes. And Donald Trump got 99.64% of the vote. You see why folks are immediately flipping out over this, saying, something hinky's going on. And y'all, I totally empathize with that impetus. I understand why people so desperately want to see the election results overturned. That is the fantasy that people have been dreaming of since November 6th. This is the blue anon, like, oh my gosh, you guys, what if we could just magically undo all of this nightmare? What if we didn't actually have to work to dig ourselves out from fascism? What if we didn't actually have to put together a massive resistance of the people that will take months and months of concerted effort and significant sacrifice from tens of millions of Americans in order to stop the authoritarian takeover of the United States? What if we didn't have to do that? What if we could just find out that things were fixed in the election, and then we just undo it, and then we just put Kamala in the White House? What if we could do that? That would be so great if that would happen. Again, I desperately understand people wanting to have that fantasy and to glom onto it, because you know what? It absolves us of actually having to do any of the work. Because the work required to organize and resist a fascist takeover, it's a heavy, heavy lift. Wouldn't it just be nicer if everything were magically undone? But I've been saying to the Delu Blues and everybody else since November 6th, that is not happening. There is no white knight that is going to come and save us. There's no magical snap of the fingers that's going to undo everything. We have to save ourselves. I want to point you to a little bit of fact checking on this before you lean in too heavily and get all whipped up about what people are saying over this lawsuit. PolitiFact actually addressed this way back in February. And I tried to bring it up with some Blue Anoners on TikTok way back then, and they blocked me. It's really important to understand who the voters are in Ramapo. It's important to know that this is an Orthodox Jewish community, and according to PolitiFact, they often vote nearly entirely for one candidate in each race, but may not vote for the same party in every race. For example, they may vote as a bloc for a Republican for president, but for a Democrat for Senate or other local races. The community votes the way their rabbi tells them to vote, pretty uniformly. In fact, if you look at 2020, the same thing happened. The district went entirely for Trump. 0 votes for Biden. Please stop saying elections are rigged. Please stop discouraging people from voting. I know this lawsuit is a tempting lure. We have to do the work to save us, and that includes voting.